What's up, everybody? Welcome. It's navigating difficult conversations around aging, and my dogs are barking right as we start. This is wonderful. As you guys are coming in, let us know where you're at. Hit on the chat and type and let us know where you are watching us from. We're going to wait until the room fills. I am in Atlanta. Our guest Amy is in. Where are you, Amy?
I'm in Chandler, Arizona.
Arizona. Somebody's got it in between. All right, go blue. Look at that. I know who that is. Okay, Cincinnati. Here we go.
Cincinnati.
Canada.
I grew up near Cincinnati in Athens, Ohio.
Oh, I love Cincinnati.
Oh, yeah. We got Canada.
Hey, all right, that's it. We got Canada, Ohio, and Michigan. So this will be a very kind presentation. It's like the kindest three places in the world. All right, everybody, we're going to get started here in about 30. There we go, Edmonton. All right, we got a lot of Canada. I like it. All right. Kindest place. Anybody else? We need one more. I need one more, and then I'm going to get started. Where's everybody calling from? Somebody, don't be shy. There's got to be a Virginia in there somewhere, or Washington, D.C. Tampa. All right, Janice, thank you. We'll start. Okay. Escudero, McHenry. All right, now they're coming in. Okay. All right, guys, I think we're going to get started. My name is Matt Paxton. Everybody here knows me from Hoarders or Legacy Lists with Matt Paxton, or my book, Keep the Memories Loose and Stuff. This is my very good friend, Amy Goyer. Amy, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here and a good opportunity to chat with you.
All right, so before we get started, Amy, tell us what you do and how in the world you got into it.
Well, I focus and specialize in the field of aging, and my major focus is around family caregiving. And how I got into this, I started my career out as a music therapist, and I worked in adult daycare centers and nursing homes. Then I worked for the Ohio Department of Aging. Later, I worked for AARP full-time, and I eventually became a consultant because I needed to take care of my parents. So I moved from Washington, D.C. out here to Arizona to take care of them. My dad had Alzheimer's. My mom had had a stroke when she was only 63. And during that time, I also cared for my grandparents when I was in my 20s, and other family members. My sister became very ill with Cushing disease while I was caring for my parents. So long story short, I went through about 11 years of very intensive caregiving for my family. And so I guess what I do is, I always say it's a perfect fusion of my personal life and my professional life. And I just feel very passionate about supporting family caregivers. So I share my own experiences and resources, and just try to help family caregivers.
So everybody watching, Amy has been my go-to for caregiving advice, really, for family caregiving advice for, gosh, longer than I really care to admit. What I love, and Amy finally said what I care most about, is she does not hide the fact between personal and business life. And when you're a caregiver, man, it's just blended, and sometimes it's great and sometimes it's awful. But I think everyone listening, we're probably called to it. That's why we do it. Obviously, if you're watching, you know me. I've been downsizing for 25. It'll be 25 years this year, which is crazy. And it's because, yeah, everybody. I was 8 years old when I started, I think. No, I was 20. I was actually 24. So this is starting actually next week. I will have been doing this longer than I wasn't, which is crazy. And but I did because I was called to it, and family, just stuff happened, life happened, and it was kind of my job to step into it. And I think that's one of the reasons I like talking about caregiving so much, is it's, lazy people don't end up being family caregivers. Like, really fascinating, good people end up being the ones that kind of take the reins and take over. I would be remiss if I don't thank First Light and the First Light franchises for hosting this tonight. Thank you, guys. And we'll have ways you can contact them later, but just thanks them for getting us on to talk about this. But we have a lot of questions. People pre-registered and sent in a lot of questions, and I think the questions are just going to kind of help us. So we're going to really just jump into them. Folks, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I will check them throughout. We have about 5 or 6 good ones already, but if you have one, I'll grab it and say it at the right time. But Amy, you've been doing this for like ever.
Yeah, longer than
there you go. Okay. So what do you get? I mean, what, like, just from the start, like, what kind of advice do you give people, like, the most? Like, what's the number one question you get asked all the time?
Well, I think with family caregiving, everybody's situation is so unique, but there are some things that are kind of similar across the board. And our topic today is a big one. How these difficult family conversations, how do I talk to my loved ones, whether it's your loved ones that you're caring for, or if it's other family members that are part of the caregiving team, how do you have these conversations and address change is really hard for people. So I think that's part of these conversations. So I have some kind of basic tips that I like to share with people that can be applied to a lot of the things we'll talk about.
Okay, so let's jump in the very first one. How do I approach hygiene related issues when it appears my loved one is not caring for themselves?
So I want to start by giving you kind of the general.
Okay, let's do general first. So overall, there we go. Overall, I jumped ahead. Overall, difficult conversations. How do you have them?
Yeah, and then we'll apply this to like those specific situations. So the first thing is to talk early and often. And I say early because it is so much easier to talk about something that's difficult if it's not imminent. So if you talk, when your parents are independent and they're doing fine, about someday when you don't drive anymore, or someday when you need some help in the house, things like that, it always helps. And I say often because things change. Financial situation can change, our health conditions change. So it's important to kind of keep having these conversations, and it kind of desensitizes it. It makes it a more matter of fact conversation. And I always tell people it's so important that you do your homework before you have the conversation. So, for example, Matt, if you're looking at, you want your parents to downsize, you want them to move. Well, where are they going to go? Look into what the options are. Tell them specifically what, here are places in the community you could go. Here's what the costs will be. Here's how we'll help you move, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you don't come to the conversation equipped with that, it's just a general, well, I think you should move. And that's just
so early, often, and be prepared.
And be prepared, right? And the way you approach this conversation matters. So approaching it with love and concern and respect is absolutely key. This may come up in this conversation, so I'm going to put it right out there. I do not agree with the phrase parenting your parents and or your spouse or whoever you're caring for. They will always be that person to you. And if you start thinking of it that way, it affects how you interact with them. And if you talk down to someone like they're a child, they're not going to react well.
Well, let's take that further. If you treat them that way, then they become that person, and they're no longer your partner or your brother or your sister or whatever, or even their mom.
Right. And if you lose your identity, they can become depressed, and there's a whole lot of downward spiral that can happen with that.
Well, let's pause on that really quick. That's really important because so on the hoarding, so obviously I know a little bit about downsizing and hoarding, and very similar techniques in initiating the conversation. I always say if you can see the mess, don't talk about it. So that actually, like, you're already too late. Like, you need to have it before. Like, if you're calling, the change needed to happen yesterday, then it's too late to have a conversation, and your options are gone. And so I always say have it a lot earlier. Do have it more often, so you're not having the horrible like life is over conversation. You're having the hey, we need to start thinking about this, and then be prepared. But I think the most compassion is really the biggest tool that I always find in conversation.
It's huge. That's huge. And I always say your good communication skills. You've probably had training at work or wherever, and using I statements is a key thing. So you're not going to walk in and say you shouldn't live here anymore, or you need help, or you can't do this. If you say, I'm concerned for your safety in this home, or I'm concerned for your safety when you're bathing, using I statements, people react differently. It's well researched. So, think about that and ask them how they think they're doing. Make it a conversation. It's not a power play. It's a conversation.
Well, I think that for me, on the compassion side, like, really understand that you just said that it's a loss of identity, but they've lost so much other things. They've lost mobility, they've lost freedom, they've lost independence, they've lost their jobs, they've lost their friends, they've lost so much. And when you take their identity away, it's just another thing stacked on top. We have a,
It is.
go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say that, a lot of feelings are involved in this. Change, the unknown is hard, change is hard. So you got to validate how they're feeling about that.
All right, we have a really good question that came in from Nicolette, and it says Nicolette. I hope your first and last name are Nicolette, but I got a hunch that's a typo. But that would be awesome if it was. How do you have these conversations and involve your siblings who are not having the same approach as you? So this is really challenging. She's got two siblings that take a different approach than you do. How do you don't change, I would assume you do not change how you're communicating with your parents, but how do you get your siblings on board with this communication?
Well, keep in mind these same things we've been talking about, the same steps. You've got to treat them, the same way. You've got to be respectful. You've got to use your I statements and everything. Do your homework before the conversation. I think what's really important is to look at it as a team, and that everyone in the team is not going to do the same thing. So if you've got siblings who are not cooperative, they're not doing what you want them to do, they don't agree, things like that, you have to draw on the strengths of everyone and make sure that everyone feels they're listened to. So that each team member is important. For example, one of the most common things I hear is, well, I'm doing a lot more than my siblings are doing. But, I had a sibling who had a hard time with hands-on care, but she would clean out the closet and cook food and do other things that were helpful on the team. So, and when you talk with, you have to listen to what they're saying and what their viewpoint is. The common goal has to be what's in the best interest of your loved one, your parent in this situation. And so, have to keep going back to that. What's in the best interest of mom or dad? And honestly, a lot of people these days are getting mediation. They'll get an objective third party to come in and have there are elder care mediators who are, and it's meant to not be an adversarial situation. It's meant to be almost more like a counseling thing where that person helps mediate and come up with agreements that everybody can live with.
Is this like a life care manager or?
No, it's there are actually trained mediators. So you've heard mediators are used in divorces or court cases. You go to small claims court or something like that. There are mediators who are trained specifically for elder care issues.
Dude.
And you can pull them in and they're, so they understand the long-term care issues and all of that, as well as just the family dynamics. And they just help people come up with agreements, and things that everybody can live with.
That's awesome. Elder care mediators. All right. Learn something new every day. I didn't know that. I want
to mediate.
I want to go back to one thing you said earlier, I statements. What are I statements? You said use your I statements.
So so I statements. So instead of starting out with, you need to move, you shouldn't be doing that, you shouldn't drive anymore. Think how you feel when somebody approaches you in that way, as opposed to, I'm really concerned about your driving because I've noticed some dings on the car and you've had a bunch of tickets. I want to make sure that you're safe and that you don't have the possibility of hurting someone else. Those are I statements. I'm concerned about your welfare, or I'm wondering how you're feeling in the home. Are you feeling safe? Would it be helpful to have some help? So it's a very different thing. Driving is a good example because people like to say, well, I'm taking away.
Hold off on driving. We've got a whole section on driving. So don't use that as an example. Well, this is good. So like my therapist and obviously I'm very open about this. The reason why I got into hoarding was because I've been in so much therapy that I was able to use it in a lot of my cleaning. And my therapist is really blunt. She said, you're changing it from you suck to I love you. And she goes, it changes the whole tone.
I love that.
She goes, you're changing the entire tone because the reason you're doing this is because you love the person. And if you tell me, if you say you, I can guarantee you whatever you just said followed you. I'm not doing it. It's not happening. I mean, you get ice cream. I'm not even gonna get ice cream. And I love ice cream, but it's not going to happen because you told me I had to do it. So I love you. Yeah. All right.
And it might not be you suck. It might be you are incompetent too. That's how it comes across,
Well, it comes across as a lot more negative than you intended, because let's talk, we're in family caregiving, right? And so it's not like we're chill. Like everything's elevated already when you have this original conversation, unless you've been doing it early and often, like you said, and most of us haven't.
Right,
And so you really have to be careful. Just because you intend it one way doesn't mean it's perceived that way. All right, we got a lot of questions, and Nicolette said we're good, so we can keep going. It was a typo. She let me know. Okay, let's get into let's get right to it. What's the best way to talk to my parents about their current living situation, and if any changes need to be made?
So let's think about these steps that I had shared and go through them in this thing. So doing your homework first. You're going to look at what the living options are: a smaller house, a senior community, a facility, a group home, in-home care, live in, and what you might want to do is narrow it down, but do all the things. And one of the most important things, Matt, is you have to know the person you're talking to. So some people want to know all the options. They're going to want know all the information. Other people will be overwhelmed by that. So you need to know who you're talking to. Some people may need all the details. How much is it going to cost? How will I be moved? Other people are just want to make the basic choices. So for example, my parents we wanted dad to stop driving, and he said, okay, well then we're not staying in this house. We're not going to be stuck in this house. And I said, okay, where do you want to go? Well, a senior community, I think was what he said. And so I did the research. I visited 12 places. I looked at, independent versus assisted and all of those options. I narrowed it down to 3 and took them to those 3 places. They made the final choice. So there was more buy-in on their part. Then I coordinated the move and all those things. They didn't need those details. They just wanted to make that choice for them. So that's one of the most important things when you talk about changing the living situation. I think it's really important to validate how they feel in this. This is their home. I mean, we all love our homes, most of us. And so, especially if they've been in there a long time, you and I were just talking, I'm going to be moving out of a place I've lived in almost 30 years. It's daunting. I mean, there's a lot of stuff and there's a lot of memories and all of that. So, you need to validate that that's really hard, but you're going to be there for them. You're here to do it with them. You're on the same team. And whatever choice you make is for them to be as independent as possible for as long as possible. And that's your common goal. One more tip here is that you might try an indirect approach. So it might be, my friend's mom moved and she loves this place. Let's go visit her there. Or it might be, I read this article or saw this webinar and I was thinking, let's talk about where you might want to live someday. If you want to stay here, then we need to do research into in-home services. If you want to move to a different place, or if you ever need to live in a facility, what are the best ones around here? So that make it inclusive if you possibly can.
My kids tricked me last week. If you don't know, I have 7 kids, 6 boys. And the oldest boy tricked me into, he said, hey, I heard this movie theater, they have a new ice cream, like an ice cream stand there. It's really good ice cream. And I was like, oh, well, I've been wanting to see that movie. Let's go to the movie. We get there and there was no ice cream. And I'm like, dude, where's the ice cream? And he's like, oh, I just wanted to go to the movie, man. I thought you would see it. So I wasn't happy with the lie. I wasn't happy with the lie, but I really respected the indirect approach. He just wanted me to get, he knew I'd like ice cream. Right. But I would have gone to the movie anyway. But he got me. And so my aging version of that is, tell them they have good lasagna. Let's go check it out. All right, I don't mean to rush. Right. We got so many good questions here. I'm going to jump on. Keep going.
Can I make one more point on this one, Matt, really quickly? Because this will apply to a lot of things that we're talking about. One of the important things is to involve the right people in the conversation. So, for example, in this situation, if you're talking about moving or changing your living situation or getting more help at home, you might want to have a professional in aging life care expert who can come in and do an assessment. And then it's not you, their child or their spouse saying, you need some help with these skills. It's a professional coming in. And sometimes people are more open to that. Sometimes, depending on what you're talking about, it might be that you want the lawyer to be part of the conversation, or their doctor can, say, I really I have concerns about you driving now. And sometimes they'll take that better from the doctor than they will from a family member.
So much. So a lot of times, even on the downsizing side, when a family brings me in to give them an estimate on downsizing, I'll say, hey, you need to meet with the age in place person as well. Like, I go, from my perspective, I think this is easy. We could do this. Here's all your options. But let's look at all the options because we want what's best for you. And I think that the independent person really appreciates knowing that we've looked at all sides, right? And we know what all the options are. And as a service provider, I promise you, we want you to look at every option. We want you to call 3 of our competitors, like find the right one that's right for you and your family. Because at the end, that's all we want.
Right.
We don't want a client that doesn't want us. We want someone that wants, and they're doing the right thing for them. So look at all your options. All right.
Yes.
I think we're going to stick with family. How do you talk to your brother or sister when they're in complete denial about what's happening with the family?
Yeah, that's really a tricky thing. I think sometimes, that's part of doing the homework. You need to have specific examples. It's not enough to say, I don't think mom's safe in her house anymore. You need to have specific examples. Mom,
like she broke both hips this year, right?
Yeah, exactly. She has pushed her emergency button 10 times. Mom is not eating right. Here's what she had to eat the last week. I went and cleaned out her refrigerator. She needs some more help. I think it's too broad because so many of it, we don't want to think of our parents as going downhill. That's really hard. And so we do get in denial about it some. And especially long distance, they're not seeing it. They talk on the phone, they seem fine. Even in a little video chat, they might seem fine. But you go to the house and you say, oh my gosh, there's mold in the bathroom and they're not, they need some help. So specific examples are really, really key, and having enough of them. One example is not enough for somebody to say, well, make a change. And again, do your homework. If there's an example of, mom's not eating right, I looked into it. Here are 4 options for getting mom meals: having someone in and cook them, having Meals on Wheels delivered, having one of those other meal services delivered. I come once a week and cook food.
We're going back to our I statements. Like, this is what I do. What do you want? What do you want from mom?
And with siblings, don't you think it's so key that you have specific asks? So, if let's say you have a sibling that's long distance and you are the one who's there and you see mom needs help with stuff, and you can go cook a meal for them a few times, but you want your sibling to help pay for it, because they're not there to do it. And so you need to have a specific ask. And how much is that going to be? And do you think you could contribute, $100 a week or whatever? So really specific is good.
Well, and I also will often get the other spouse to participate. A lot of times the family says, well, we'll just do it ourselves. I say, great. We'll be here for a whole day of cleanup. I need you to come do it. I need you to participate. And then when they start to participate, they're like, oh, what does this cost? Let's go. I don't care. Like, I can't do this for 10 days. And so when you get them participating and seeing, and you're not shoving it in their face, you're just saying, hey, this is challenging. Amy, did we lose you? Are you still going? Oh, boom, there she is. All right. Oh, we lost her, everybody. There we go. Okay, we're back in. All right, next question. How do you approach the hygiene related? Oop. Did we lose Amy? All right, folks, I'm going to keep going until she gets back in. She's going to reboot. I will answer some of the questions that have come in on the downsizing side. Let me go skip down to the, oh, there she almost was. She is reconnecting. I had ones about downsizing. There she is. Amy, you back?
Okay. Yeah, first I was gone, and then I was back, and you were gone, and then.
All right, we're back in. Thank you, everybody. We are juggling life, work, and caregiving, and this is life. Your internet goes out. All right, let's get back at it. How do we approach the hygiene-related issues when it appears my loved one is not caring for themselves? No, we lost her again. I'm going to answer that question. There she is. She's back. Okay. How would you answer that question, Amy?
That's so weird. Well, the key thing is to think about why. Why is this happening? Are there vision problems? They don't know they're wearing dirty clothes. Are there mobility issues? They're afraid to take a shower because they're afraid they're going to fall. One of the key things is being cold. People don't want to take a shower because they don't want to be cold. And as you get older, many people are cold more easily. And so they, for example, we installed a heater in the bathroom for my dad, and a towel warmer, and that made a huge difference for him. And he loved his shower because he liked the warm water, but he did not want to take his clothes off and get cold.
It was
So
the
sometimes it's
time
really,
between the shower and drying off. That is what they want
yeah,
to avoid. This one blew me away, y'all. I didn't know that answer. And when Amy told me, I was like, wow. And it makes total
yeah.
sense.
And prior, yeah, and prior too, because taking your clothes off, first of all, makes you feel vulnerable. And then you're cold. Like, that's the pits. And when you're older, it's more, even worse. You're more sensitive in general. And if you have someone who has dementia, they really can't put this together. This does not make sense. Why would I take my clothes off when I feel warm and safe and secure? And then you're going to take my clothes off and I'm going to be cold. Then you're going to have water hitting me. Some people don't like the feel of water actually hitting their body or their head. And so you can get a shower head that's more gentle. Or I know one caregiver told me she got this rinseless shampoo for her husband's head because he could not stand the feel of the water on his head. So there can be sensory issues as well. So just really think about, it might be that they're embarrassed to have someone help them. And sometimes they don't want a family member to help, but they're okay with a professional coming in.
That has
My
been
uncle
my
was like,
experience. I've started to do a lot more work with First Light Home Care, and I've been amazed how many people would rather have a professional come in and help them than a family member help them
yeah,
inside.
yeah. My uncle was like that. He didn't want his kids to help him, but a professional was okay because that's their job,
I'm okay with being
So,
brutally honest about this, but you can be brutally honest and still be kind. Like, on the
right.
hoarding side, I don't mind saying, "Hey, man, you don't know this, but you actually don't smell very good." I didn't say, you're gross, you're disgusting, you're horrible." I just said, "Hey, I'm not sure that you're aware, but this is a stronger smell than I was expecting." You know, and then,
Yeah.
but I think so.
Yeah.
You're
And
saying,
that's, and you
well, yeah.
saying it respect.
What's your thought on that?
Yeah. I think you're saying it respectfully.
Yeah,
You're approaching this person. You're talking to them in a matter of fact way. I think you have to be really matter of people bring this up about helping their loved ones use the toilet, especially if you're opposite sex caring, like a daughter caring for their father. That was hard for me at first with my dad, but being very matter of fact about it. This is something that needs to be done. And I just almost look at myself like a professional. I have professional experience. Most people don't. You just do it very matter of factly, and that gives them dignity. I think dignity is absolutely key. So you be patient, you be respectful, matter of fact about it. You also can think about what motivates them. So it might be that we're going to go out to eat, and you need to get cleaned up for that. You need to change your clothes, you need to take a shower or whatever. It might be going to church or temple might be a motivation for them. Try to figure out what makes them tick. And some people are just extremely stubborn about it, and it is more because there's some other mitigating factor.
So on the why, I think the very first thing on the hygiene is, ask them, why do you not like to take a shower? I think that's actually the best piece of advice, and truly understand
Yes.
that why and look for solutions that will fix that why. And
Mm-hmm.
so never in that
Yes.
conversation did we say, "You're gross, you're disgusting, why don't you shower?" We didn't push it. We said, "Hey, let's dig deeper and
Yeah.
appropriately." Okay. All
Yeah.
right. This is the hardest one, I think. Um, and people, I'm getting all the questions you're sending. I will get to them. They're going to fit at the right time. I just don't want anyone to think that I'm ignoring you. We're getting a lot of good questions. Um, how do I bring up concerns about whether or not my loved one should continue to drive? This is one I see. I had someone ask me, they said, "I'll pay you if you can get my mom's keys." Like, they wanted me to lose their mom's keys during the move.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
wouldn't
Yeah.
do that." But talk to me, how would you approach that?
Yeah. Well, the first thing to remember is I say to people, if someone walked up to you today and said, you can't drive anymore, how would that feel to you now? At your age, no matter how old you are. I haven't been able to drive because I had a total knee replacement over the past couple months. And it was a really, it took my independence. I was relying on family members to take me to the grocery store or do any kind of shopping. I couldn't just have an idea and want to go somewhere. After my dad stopped driving, I asked him, do you miss driving? Because I like to drive. I like the act of driving, And he said, not so much, but I miss being able to go where I want to go when I want to go there. That is key. Our wheels are our independence. So you have to approach it understanding that. You can't approach it as, well, they're 90 years old. Why do they want to drive? The same reason you want to drive. So, that is not a viable approach. So you have to remember that driving is a matter of health and safety and skills. It's not an age issue. So don't use their age as a reason. You need to ride along. This is the homework part. You ride along. You look for signs, specific things that you can tell them. I'm seeing you had a lot of close calls, near accidents. I saw a lot of dents and scrapes on one side of my dad's car. Well, it turns out he had glaucoma. So his vision was going and he was not able to see that well. And in the end, he had Alzheimer's. And so his visual processing was also affected. It could be that they don't have the mobility, so they can't turn to look over their shoulder or look for other cars. If they're going too slow and other cars are honking at them, a slow response time, judgment, being distracted more easily, not being able to see. Vision is a big issue. So you look for what these specifics are. And then, you hopefully are early and often in conversation, you talk to them and they refresh their driving skills, they take a driving course like that. They start to modify. Self-modify is great. I'm not going to drive at night. I'm only going to stay within a certain radius of my familiar area around my home. Gradually modifying driving less until you stop altogether and have other options. And this is one of those things, Matt, where you have to have the other options when you have this conversation. You can't say, I'm taking away your keys. Obviously, that's an I statement. You're not going to say that. You're going to say, I would really like for you to hang up your keys now. So even if you start the I statement that way and you say, I'm taking away your keys, same effect. So instead, we're hanging up the keys. I'd like to ask you to hang up the keys. And here's how you're going to get to the grocery store, church, to friend's house, to the community center, the senior center, to your volunteer place, right, wherever. And then, then it becomes a more real thing. And honestly, having the right person part of the conversation, many times that is a conversation that people ask the doctor to have with their loved one. My dad's doctor told him, I really think that you should stop driving now.
Did you call ahead and ask the doctor to have the conversation, or did you ask him bluntly?
My sister did. So this is a cautionary tale. So my sister did that, didn't tell me she'd done that, said and then to have this appointment. So I got a ticket and flew out to be there at that appointment at least. And so I hadn't had time to do the research. But basically, the options were, Susie will drive you somewhere. I'll drive you somewhere. I'm going to move out there and be there for you. We'll get you transportation. But I think it's better to make sure the family's all on the same page and not have one sibling, just do that. One of the things that works for some people is you calculate what they are spending on the car, the expense of the car, the gas, the insurance, et cetera, and you say, here's the money you'll be saving, and you'll have that money to pay for transportation if you need it. And sometimes that clicks for people. They're like, yeah, I'm not driving that much anyway, and look at all the money.
Usually, totally. And there's one thing that my mom is more than cheap, which is stubborn. Or she's more cheap than stubborn. And if you're watching, Mom, sorry, it's a fact. But yes, if you point out that, hey, you're going to save $300, then she's all about it. All right, that's a good.
Sometimes that.
Yeah, this is a good segue. This is the bigger talk, the money talk. How do you talk about the money?
Yeah, the money is a big thing. And it's, first of all, money's taboo topic for many people, and we're brought up in our families not to talk about money, and so it can be a hard thing anyway, right? And so you have to approach it in, again, a very matter-of-fact way, and get clear about what exactly is your concern. What is it you need to know? What's your ultimate goal? Are you looking at the future costs of care? So you need to know what their financial resources are. Are you looking at their current living expenses and making sure they're actually paying their bills? Are you looking at, once they're gone, will you know how to manage their estate? Do you know where is all the information? Where do you go for that? Are you looking at, are they going to qualify for Medicaid? So you now need to start thinking about that ahead of time. So be really clear about what you need to know, because just talking to someone, again, broadly, Mom, I need to know your financial situation. Way too broad. That just feels overwhelming to anyone and intrusive. So you can say, I'm concerned about making sure that you have the finances and the resources to be able to stay in your home, or to be able to move where you want to move, things like that. Can we talk through some of that? Or, I know that you want me to manage your estate when you pass, and I don't know anything. I don't know where any of the information is, your passwords, anything like that. So I think that's important. One thing you can do is do the homework part. Genworth has a study they do every year that talks about the cost of caring. What's the average cost in your area of home health, assisted living, skilled nursing, that type of thing. So that kind of gives you an idea. Adult daycare, AARP has a long-term care cost calculator. Things like that can be really helpful. But you can also just call your local agencies and say, how much are you charging right now? And that helps you get an idea and say, Mom, I know you're going to be needing eventually some help, and it's going to cost $25 an hour. So I need to calculate and make sure that we're prepared for that. That's a very respectful and a common goal. You're, again, trying to be helpful. You're concerned about them.
Well,
if they won't talk to you about it,
and we're going at it at the early often. We're going at it at the early often approach, which is, hey, we don't need to be there yet. It's harder to have that conversation. Hey, Mom, I just paid a bunch of stuff. Can you pay me back? Oh, you don't have any money? Someone asked earlier, Robert asked earlier, could you talk more about the financial aspects, such as comparing monthly costs for home care compared to institutional care? And I think you'll have, I know on your personal website, I'm assuming you'll have links to, and we'll give that at the end of the talk, but you'll have links to this AARP calculator and the Genworth report. And then at the end of the day, you got to get on the phone and call. I mean, you've got to do your homework.
Because it varies so much. So those tools are helpful to give you kind of an average, but you could call your local agency and it's a completely different number. So you need to visit these places, you need to talk to companies, you need to really put together, okay, what's that going to cost, and how many hours a day are we going to need, and how are we, can we do adult daycare and then supplement with other in-home care, because adult daycare will save some money. Is there an adult daycare in our area that we even can consider that?
Are there any professional resources you would use? Is there any professional resource you would use to help you figure all this out? Like, I use life care managers to help me find places. What would you?
Aging Life Care.
Okay.
Yeah, Aging Life Care Experts. The Aging Life Care Association has a finder on their website, and you can find it. Sometimes they're called geriatric care managers or aging life care experts. They can do assessments, and they work on budget as well, so they'll help you kind of figure that out. The Area Agency on Aging sometimes has care management services that can kind of help you with some of this. They'll have caregiving things too, where they might have a workshop on the financial aspects. You can find your Area Agency on Aging by going to the Elder Care Locator, and that website is just eldercare.acl.gov, and put in your zip code, and then you can find your local your local Area Agency on Aging. That can be really helpful. Matt, one story that always sticks in my head that a caregiver told me was that they kept trying to get their mom to talk about this stuff. And she kept putting it off. And then she died suddenly. She was in her 70s. She wasn't that old, but she died. And they could not find anything. And they said they finally found her home insurance information, and several other key piece documents in her knitting basket. So that's what you're up against if you don't try to start.
I can't tell you how many times I've been hired to find those documents. Mom passes
I'm
away,
sure.
and they say, "Hey, while you're cleaning, we need all of these documents." And they'll hand me my book, and they're like, "Here's a list of the documents you put in your book. Can you find any of these for us?" And it's like, "Yeah, sure."
Can you find them?
You
Yeah.
knocked out a
And,
couple questions there. You knocked out a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Where another website I give out is aginglifecare.org. Aginglifecare.org.
Yeah, and that's what I was talking about with the aging life care managers, or sometimes they're called geriatric care managers or case managers. They're great. They can be very helpful.
I had a very challenging uncle that was kicked out of a dementia care place, and we didn't know where we were going to put him. We were going to put him in my. And this guy was my hero growing up. He was a UFC fighter in the '80s. He got beat up pretty bad, but he had a great time doing it, and he didn't leave anything on the table. But when it came time to find him a place to live, it was very challenging because he was 6'7", and he was getting kicked out everywhere. And we thought he was going to have to live with my mom, and we were distraught and lost and did not know where to start. And I had worked with a bunch of different life care managers. Went on the website, called the local one, and within hours, she had 4 or 5 options for us that we didn't even know existed. And now 5 years later, this lady manages my mom's care, my grandmother's care, and my uncle's care for me from very far away. I'm 6 states away. So there's a lot of options out there. I think one of the key things here is you got to do your research, folks. I'm getting a lot of questions on the right here. How do I find this? How do I find that? You've got to start, you've got to get on the phone, start calling. You got to get on the internet, start looking for your options. If you have a home care provider, ask about that. If you have a life care provider, ask them. But you've got to do your homework. That keeps coming up. All right, we are running out of time. I want to get into some more questions here. I'm gonna get right into the questions that are on very specific questions we got on email. My 76-year-old limited mobility mother wants to move in with me and wants me to take care of her, but I don't want that.
Okay. Hold on one second. I'm typing into the chat the Aging Life Care website.
Okay. I'll do that while you answer this question. I'll do that.
Okay. So I just did that really quick. Okay. So I'm sorry. So my mom wants me to move. Say the question one more time.
My 76-year-old limited mobility mother wants to move in with me and wants me to take care of her, but I don't want that. So basically, it's a oldest daughter that is not have the life to take, is not ready, prepared to take care of their mom. How would you answer that?
Right.
How should they tell their mom?
And so many times families, they want only family to take care of them, and that there are lots of issues around that, dignity and feeling safe and all of those issues. But if you don't want to do that, then now it's time to do your homework. What are the other options? Here are, I don't feel equipped to do this, or my home isn't appropriate for this. Why specifically don't you want to do it? I don't feel equipped physically to be able to manage your care. Therefore, here are the other options. It's just so important not to just say, I can't do that. It's to say, I can't do that, and here are the other options. So there's always got to be an and. So if this is a group home you can go to, this is a facility, this is in-home care where you're living right now, and here's what the costs are going to be and the comparison, and talk about the benefits for your loved one. I think being clear, it's not that I don't love you, Mom. It's that I don't feel that I can handle this appropriately. I will still be your caregiver. I'll still coordinate your care. I'm still going to be making decisions and helping you, but I'm going to need help to do that in these other ways, so that you're not just walking away from the person. I have a lot of caregivers say to me, well, my husband moved into a facility, so I'm not his primary caregiver anymore. Oh, yes, you are. In fact, your job just got a little harder, because now you're coordinating with the facility and you're making sure he's getting the care he's supposed to get, and you're still the one calling the doctor, and you're still doing a lot of the care. So I think that's super important to remember, that you may not have the role that they were hoping you would have with hands-on care, but you still have a role.
You still have a lot of role. Yeah. All right.
A very important role.
Yes. All right. This is kind of aligned with that question. It's from Shirley, who's on live with us now. How do you handle it when you are the only living relative? You live halfway across the state and you hear from their doctors that they can't live alone and drive anymore. And I want to acknowledge this. This is something I'm hearing a lot over the last really 2 to 3 years. There's a lot of folks that are kind of the end of the line. There's no other siblings. There's no set of grandparents, and they're also aging, but they've got to take care of their parents. And so they're feeling, or maybe their sister passed away, right? Like there's all these different situations where they're just the last one and they kind of got to do it all. It wasn't by choice. It just kind of happened. What are the options there?
Yeah. Right. So some of the things that we've been talking about, if the doctor's saying they can't live on their own and they can't drive anymore, then you've got to look into what are the options. And you call the Area Agency on Aging and you find out what are the in-home services that can be provided. What are senior transportation options? Is your loved one cognitively able to manage that? If they have someone come to pick them up for a ride and go to the doctor's appointment, can they do that? Can they order a ride? So finding what the options are that are actually viable for that person. If then you're looking at them not living in their home anymore, all right, well then what are the options where they could live? Are there things there where in their community where they live? And if so, do they have support in the community? Are there people there who can be on your caregiving team to look out for them? If not, then you might need to move them someplace closer to where you live. I mean, it's always going to be easier if you're there. And that's why I came out here to take care of my parents. And not everybody can do that. Not everybody can pick up and move. And I quit my job and became a consultant so that I could work from anywhere, but not everybody can do that. So sometimes parents move closer to them. And so you've got to look at the various options. You know, I make lists. I put it all out and I do the pros and cons of all the options, the pros and cons for the caregiver and for the care recipient.
So I'm really big on spreadsheets. And this is why I think spreadsheets can answer a lot of difficult decisions, right? It's not that it should always be about the math, but sometimes, I've got my dogs are coming in to say hi. Sorry, everybody. I think sometimes the math helps us make the decision. And so I will write down all the options. And most people think they can't afford home care. They think they can't afford going into a new community. You'd be surprised. Someone asked me earlier, how do I convince my mom to move? I got that in an earlier chat. How do I get my mom to convince that now's the time to downsize and move? Well, believe it or not, the number one way to do that is to actually talk about housing costs right now and housing prices, what they're selling for. Yes, we're in a bit of a slump compared to last year, but we're still at the second highest ever housing cost we've ever seen in our entire life. And so a lot of these people bought the house for 50 and they can sell it for 350 or 850 or even $1 million if you're in DC, like depending where you're calling from. There's significant wealth in that asset, and that gives you a little more power. And so I think it's like, take advantage of the time of the housing market. Really, like, you may not have enough money at all currently in your cash flow, but you'd be amazed if you sell your house. I don't let finances be the reason we don't look at health care costs and we don't look at home health care, but I do let it be a reason we can do it. You'd be amazed how much money is actually in your house. But do the math and write it all down.
You can look at reverse mortgages. You can look at reverse mortgages and other options as well, but you need to talk with a financial advisor to find the best thing. And I have a lot of families who their initial thought is mom's going to move out eventually to someplace and they'll take care of her. And then they start looking into it and realizing how expensive that is. And they don't understand that there are in-home services and there are ways for people to stay in their home. If they want to stay in their home till they die, they can these days. That's possible. But you have to look into it and look at the costs and get the realistic budget and figure out
what are you willing to give up and not give up. I mean, we've seen home sharing is continuing to blow up around where I live. And I live in Atlanta, and house costs are just excessive. And we're seeing kind of the Golden Girls movement where two women, neither one of them want to go into a community, so they move in together. And they share cost of housing, they share cost of healthcare, and it's working. There's lots of options.
Yeah, and there's sometimes intergenerational. Sometimes you get a college student to move in, and then they drive you to your appointments and do some housework and things in exchange. If you're doing pretty well otherwise, and then maybe you have someone come in who helps with bathing and cooks a meal or something. So
you hire a home care provider to do the stuff that the college kid is not prepared to do. But yeah, can the college kid help with some driving? Can
Right.
they help with some
Right.
driving? Absolutely.
Yeah. And they're matching places like Silver Nest is, home matching for home sharing. The other thing about this, though, is back to our earlier conversation about care managers. This person is living across the state, and you can hire a care manager, an aging life care expert in that area that knows the lay of the land to help you figure this all out. And sometimes to be your eyes and ears on the ground, because if your loved one stays at a distance, you've got to have somebody who's checking on them and knowing exactly what's happening.
Yeah, I mean,
so that's another option.
I cannot stress, when I hired a care manager, I did not think I could afford it. And now it's the best money I ever spent. I mean, it saved me thousands of dollars in trips and hotels and car rides and time being at work. And now when I talk to my mom almost, every other day, and it's like positive conversation. We're talking about living, not dying, because I paid for the right help.
And that is, yeah. And I had a aging life care expert. She was a geriatric care manager on like backup, because I would travel for work, and if something happened to my parents while I was gone, who was going to jump in and be the one to go to the hospital and help my mom because she had aphasia and couldn't advocate for herself, or my dad because he had dementia? And so I just made sure she had all their medication lists and doctors. She was kept apprised. I never had to use her, but it gave me so much peace of mind. And it was a minimal cost just to kind of get everything set up with her. So that's another way to use them.
We've got one very specific question, but I'm going to ask it because I think the question is more important than the actual answer. Estate planning with special needs. Can we put the house in his name as he is on SSI? Now, let me repeat that again because we were coughing. Can we put the house in his name as he is on SSI? Now, we're not going to comment on the specific situation because we don't know all the answers. But who do you recommend that they speak with locally to do that, to find out all those things?
That's a legal issue. Obviously, we're not lawyers and can't give legal advice, but you want to talk to either an elder care attorney, an elder care or elder law attorney, and there's a National Association of Elder Law Attorneys, NAELA.org or something like that. Yeah. And also someone who is a Medicaid planner, a certified Medicaid planner, is going to be aware of, because this could also affect somebody who's on Medicaid. So they're going to be able to look at all the issues and say, okay, well, if we do this now, how's it going to affect things down the road? So it's an estate planning question, because the person's saying, can we put the house in his name? It is also a Medicaid and SSI planning issue for your loved one. So very important for something like that to get good legal advice and financial advice, because you do not want him to lose his SSI.
No, and don't do it without getting proper professional advice. There is no bad question, and you are not the first person to have this question if you're thinking stuff like this. There are people that feed their families answering these questions. Call them and find out, because that's what they are there for. And it doesn't mean you have to hire them. That's why they exist. NAELA, NAELA, Ted. We got good help in this. I love it, Ted. NAELA.org. That is the National Association.
And they have a finder. And there's also I think it's National Academy of Estate Planning Attorneys. And they are really good at looking at all the whole big picture and benefits and that type of thing.
They know stuff that we don't know, And I've been to the NAELA conference. I've spent a lot of time with elder care because I work with a lot of them. They'll call us and they'll say, "Hey, we're looking for one document. We're looking for one item. We need to find it. Can you find it somewhere?" Yeah. But it's very doable. Guys, we're running out of time. If you've got any other questions, please leave them in the chat. I hope you've enjoyed your time with us, and I hope we brought something that's helpful. Amy, I think let's recap what we've learned. We've learned to have the conversation early and often. Be prepared. Have all your resources together. I think you can always do it with compassion. no matter what the topic is. I remind everybody, in respect, I remind, man, the tables could be easily flipped. And I remind people all the time, because I can't tell you how many families, I've now been doing this long enough in my career where I get hired to help someone, a mother, and then now I'm getting hired to help the daughter. And they say, I can't believe I'm in this situation. You know, and well, life happens, right? And I think it's really important. We just got a question. Is this recorded? Yes, Jenny, this is recorded in First Light Home Care. You're on the emailing list. First Light Home Care will be sending it out, a link to everybody. I hope you guys found it important and helpful. We're back again. Amy, how can people find you after this?
All my social media is at Amy Goyer. It's AMYGOYER. Facebook, you know, LinkedIn, Twitter, all of those things. You can also go to my website, amygoyer.com, and you should be able to message me from there. So yeah, be in touch, and if I can be of help, don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah, I think the biggest advice I want to leave is please, 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 if you don't know what to do, ask an expert for advice. If you took the time to come on today and listen for an hour, and almost all of you stayed on for the whole hour, so that lets us know we did good, Amy. I think it's important, just please, please ask for help and remind your loved one that you love them. I think the I statements, what I'm walking away with on this one, Amy, is I always got to remember to use my I statements, not my you. And if we focus on I, it leads with compassion and it gets the conversation started right. Guys, thank you so much. We appreciate it. First Light Home Care, thank you guys for sponsoring this and letting us do this. They're really good to me. They don't over advertise. They just let me come and have great conversations. So thank you, First Light Home Care. If you've got guys any questions, yeah. Oh, here it is right now. Here's the website on the screen as we're talking right now. You'll be able to find all the information you have from First Light. Any questions you have for them on home care in your area, please go there. And we have your email. We'll send you this out when it's done. Amy, you got anything else you want to finish with?
No, just thanks for having me. It's great talking to all of you, and I'm so glad it's been helpful. You know, you're not alone. There's so many people going through similar things. So connect with other caregivers. We learn the most from each other. You know, go to a support group, look online for support groups, Facebook groups, things like that. And you know, that's where we share each other's tips.
All right. Thank you guys for listening. Good luck in what you're going through, and we'll see you again soon on the next series.